morning and welcome to another program of Light and Life, coming to you from Melbourne and Channel 31. Today's discussion is about a very controversial subject. Here is Bandhu talking to Kingsley about afterlife and reincarnation.
Kingsley, the subject matter for today's discussion is somewhat controversial. The reason why I say controversial is the subject of reincarnation and life after death can be reinterpreted in many ways. For example, I saw a recent movie, The Theory of Everything. In there, the famous cosmologist, Professor Stephen Hawking, he said, I'm quoting him, "We are each free to believe what we want, and it is my view that the simplest explanation is there is no God. No one created the universe. No one directs our fate. This leads to me to a profound realization. There is probably no heaven, no afterlife either. We have this one life to appreciate the grand design of the universe, and for that I am extremely grateful." So I quoted that from Professor Stephen Hawking. And now your recent research, and I know that you have even written a paper based on life after death and reincarnation, you have found some credible evidence of the presence of reincarnation. Isn't that right?
Well, I haven't actually found credible evidence as such, but I have read a fair bit of work which has been done.
Yeah.
See, the concept of reincarnation, Bandhu,
Yeah.
that is that our soul, right, experience transmigration of the soul. That concept has been there among many cultures from time immemorial.
Right.
Now the Egyptians, the Romans, the Aztecs all believed of the transmigration of the soul after death.
Yes.
It is a fundamental precept of Buddhism and Hinduism.
Yes. Although in Buddhism it says the karma is the one which leads to the rebirth and the next birth. Okay, so what is the recent evidence that...
Well, the thing is, I have studied, read about the famous Dr. Ian Stevenson.
Right.
Now, Dr. Ian Stevenson's credentials in this field are impeccable.
Mm-hmm.
You know, Dr. Stevenson was a medical doctor.
Right.
Right, and he was the head of the Department of Psychiatry in the University of Virginia.
Right.
Now, he has done many cases and studied many cases and have published papers about reincarnation.
So, Kingsley, what were the methods that he adopted?
Well, his method was, Bandhu, basically studying mainly children who can remember a past life.
Right.
And he doesn't use hypnosis for that.
Yeah.
To take the person back into his past life.
Right.
There are children who can remember the past life, and then then he goes back and checks from medical records and from other evidence as to what the person says, who that person was before.
Right.
Now, he even matches things like birthmarks, wounds, mannerisms, and all that type of thing from the medical records. So,
Kingsley, why did you say that hypnosis is not so credible?
The thing is, hypnosis, the regression hypnosis, which means that under hypnosis you are taken back into a previous life, has some scientific flaws.
Right.
Now, the thing is that when you are taken back through hypnosis, Bandhu, what they say is that the subconscious mind can access what you believe you wanted to be,
right,
or what you were in your childhood.
Right.
Of course, that doesn't mean that regression hypnosis should be dismissed altogether. But what Dr. Ian Stevenson had done was check what the person says. So if the person says that she was so and so, and that he goes and checks the medical records, birth registers, the death certificates, the birthmarks, and all that. And I know he has done a lot of research on the subject, and I think from memory he has something like 3,000 on his files.
Right.
So, having read what he has done and his work, I mean, there are the skeptics who, and also people who are critical about the thing and put forward other explanations for his.
All these studies were done in the Western part of the world? Or?
No, as a matter of fact, I think Dr. Stevenson traveled quite widely.
Right.
Now, I'm not sure about this, but I think he went from Africa to Asia and all the various other places. See, his studies go back on this. Ever since he started this, paranormal research, his studies go back more than about 40 years.
Right.
Now, again, as I said, you don't dismiss regression hypnosis as a method and just embrace what Dr. Ian Stevenson has done.
Stay tuned. We will be continuing the discussion after the break.
You may have heard of someone who practiced hypnosis and who has written papers and books on reincarnation. I think it's Dolores Cannon.
Yes.
She was a woman who was born in St. Louis in Missouri.
Yeah, actually she was mainly involved in other mundane matters.
Well, he and her husband used to use hypnosis or practice hypnosis to help people who had habit problems such as smoking and excessive weight and all that. And in the 1960s, one of the naval doctors I think it was in the Navy base in Texas, wanted her help to treat one of his patients who was suffering from some eating disorders, who was grossly obese and who had kidney problems and hypertension.
Right.
When Dolores hypnotized the person and took her back, she remembered living in the roaring 20s in Chicago and described the place and described the events quite well. But the most important thing is her first book, A Soul Remembers Hiroshima.
That's right.
It is the bombing of Hiroshima, the atomic bomb in World War II. And she hypnotized a person who said that he was a Japanese man in Hiroshima and experienced and described the bombing, the atomic bomb, and the destruction it caused. That is another fascinating one. And she has also done thousands of studies, I think, on the subject.
So for the paper that you've written, you based on these facts?
Again, I was not forming an opinion about it. I was just having read these things, keeping my mind open and seeing whether there is some credible evidence. Of course, again, when you talk about people trying to prove the existence or the viability or that reincarnation exists or that reincarnation is real. The famous case you may have read, and which was also a movie,
yes.
Search for Bridie Murphy.
That's right.
Search for Bridie Murphy, I think was filmed in the 1950s, 56 I think. Now, that was about a woman who was hypnotized and taken back, and I think they used not her real name in the story. She was called Ruth Simmons, I think, and she was taken back, and she recalled living in Belfast in Ireland.
Right.
But they couldn't prove it because the records didn't show that a Bridie Murphy existed in those places. But then she named two people, grocers, from whom she had bought food, she said, a Mr. Farr and some John Carrigan. And they found that the records, the library records showed that there were two grocers. But then the scientists who investigated the thing found that though she was brought up by her Norwegian uncle and his wife, I think, who was Scottish, German, Irish person, though she was brought up by them, her real parents, with whom she had been for until she was 3 years, had some sort of Irish connection, right? So the scientists concluded, or some other scientists concluded, that actually she was recalling her childhood. So there was no definite proof.
Yeah. So, and the other thing, Kingsley, is that for it to be truly scientific, there is a scientific process that you have your hypothesis, then experiment, and then proof, and so on. There is a methodology. So in these cases, the sample that they take, even though Dr. Stevenson took 3,000, is comparatively small to be generalized. That's why a lot of these scientists don't want to take it as a real proof. But as you pointed out, there is some credible evidence.
Well, there is some evidence, whether you believe it or not, and hopefully we may have, there are a lot of people who are doing work in this field, and personally I keep an open mind about this thing. And which is propagated by some other religions like Buddhism and Hinduism may not be something to be laughed at after all.
After all, yes. Okay, Kingsley, thanks very much.
Thank you, Bandhu. Again, as we said, we want our viewers to keep an open mind.
Yeah.
And, we are not trying to convince them one way or the other.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
That is all the time we have today. If you have any feedback, please call Mihiri on 0414 546 833. 0414 546 833. Enjoy the rest of the day.